The market was full of noise and bright colors. Merchants shouted about their goods. Buyers argued about prices, and the smell of food mixed with dust filled the air. Yet in the middle of all this life, there sat one small figure. A girl with alien features that no one cared to notice. Her skin was pale with strange patterns that shimmered faintly under the sun. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her hands held nothing but a broken piece of cloth that she used as a blanket. Her eyes looked tired, too old for someone so young. She was only an orphan, abandoned since birth. And to the people of this city, she was nothing more than a shadow. When children ran past her, they did not invite her to play. They pointed at her and laughed, calling her strange and broken. The mothers pulled their children away, whispering that she was cursed. Men walked past without turning their heads. To them, she was not even a female. She was only a poor orphan who would never be chosen by anyone. She sat near the wall of a ruined building. Hoping for scraps, the merchants kicked dust toward her when she came close. One threw a piece of rotten fruit in her direction and laughed when she picked it up, biting into it with hunger. No one gave her respect. No one gave her care. She was invisibly inside her chest beat a heart that still wanted to live. She wished someone would see her, just once, not as a burden, but as a girl. She wished someone would speak her name without disgust. But each day passed the same. Her body grew weaker, her hope thinner, until her eyes stopped looking at faces and only stared at the ground. The city had a rule. No one cared for orphans like her. They were expected to fade away, to vanish quietly. And no one would ask what happened. It was easier for them to pretend she was not there, to believe she had no worth. Because that way they never had to feel guilty. But then something unusual happened. Among the crowd, a human walked. Taller than most aliens around him, his steps firm, his eyes sharp as they scanned the busy market. Humans were rare here. Most aliens looked at him with mistrust, whispering that he should leave. Yet he did not care. His eyes kept searching, as if looking for something only he could see. He stopped suddenly, his gaze falling on the orphan. She felt it before she looked up. The strange weight of someone actually seeing her. Her hands froze around the piece of rotten bread she had found. Her heart jumped, because no one ever stared at her like that. The crowd noticed too. And laughter rose. They mocked the human, asking if he had lost his way. They told him not to bother with the cursed girl. They said she was useless, not even worth feeding. Some laughed louder, saying she was not even a real female, only a broken thing that should be left to die. The girl's cheeks burned with shame. She wanted to crawl into the ground and disappear. She thought the human would laugh as well, maybe throw something at her, just like the others. She waited for the cruelty she knew so well, but he did not laugh. He did not throw anything. He only stepped closer. The crowd hushed for a moment, watching, confused, as the human bent slightly to meet her eyes. His voice was calm, not loud like the merchants, not sharp like the mockers, just calm. He asked her name, and the sound of it made her chest ache. Because no one had asked her name in years, she could not speak. Her throat closed with fear. But he waited patiently, his eyes steady. Not filled with disgust, not with pity either. Only something different, something she had never seen before. It looked like recognition, as if he truly saw her. The crowd began to laugh again. Louder this time. They said the human was wasting his time. They told him to buy a healthy slave if he wanted company, not a broken orphan. Some shouted that she would never bring him children, that she was worthless as a mate. But his face did not change. He reached out a hand toward her, slowly, so she could see, not forcing, not pulling, only offering. The girl stared at it with wide eyes. Her body trembled. Part of her wanted to run. Part of her wanted to take it. The air between them was heavy, as if the whole market held its breath. For the first time in her life, she felt that maybe she was not invisible. Maybe someone had noticed her as more than dirt underfoot. The moment stretched long. Her hand lifted just slightly, then stopped. Fear battled with hope inside her chest. She did not know if she should trust the merchant's jeered. Children threw stones near her feet. Voices rose all around, telling the human to walk away. But he did not move. His hand stayed steady. His eyes never left hers. And the orphan girl realized something impossible. He was not going to leave. The crowd could not understand it. They would never understand. But to the poor alien orphan who had always been ignored, this single moment was more powerful than all the cruelty she had ever faced, because for the first time she was being seen, and that was only the beginning. The market had fallen strangely quiet. All eyes fixed on the human who now stood before the orphan girl. His hand still stretched toward her, his face calm, even while voices mocked him from every corner. No one understood why a man of his kind would waste even a single glance on her. The alien merchants leaned on their stalls and laughed louder. Calling him a fool, they shouted that if he wanted a companion, he should take a strong female from their stock, not a cursed orphan with broken blood. The crowd's laughter was sharp like knives. But the human did not flinch. He looked down at the orphan, her thin arms clutching the dirty cloth to her chest. Her trembling body pressed against the cold wall. Her eyes filled with fear, but also a question: why him? Why now? Why would he not walk away like everyone else? The world told her she was worthless. Yet here was this stranger, refusing to believe it. His voice carried across the market, steady and firm. "She comes with me," he said. And for a moment, silence fell like a heavy curtain. The crowd erupted after a heartbeat, some shouting in anger, some laughing as if it was a cruel joke, others whispering that humans were mad creatures, dangerous and unpredictable. The orphan's eyes widened. She could hardly believe what she had heard. She wanted to ask if he was serious, but her voice was lost in the storm of noise around them. A merchant stepped forward, waving his hand. "Take a real female," he sneered. "This one cannot give you children. Her kind cast her out. You will regret it." But the human did not answer him. Instead, he reached into his coat and dropped a pouch of coins into the merchant's hand. Heavy enough to make the man's eyes widen, the orphan felt her chest tighten. She had been traded before, pushed around like an object, yet this felt different. The human did not touch her roughly or chain her wrists. He simply said again, calm and clear, "She comes with me," and his hand was still waiting. Steady and patient, her fingers shook as she slowly lifted her own hand. The crowd gasped as her thin alien hand touched his. His grip was warm, not crushing, not cruel, just steady like a promise. And in that instant, the market no longer existed. The voices faded. For the first time, she felt she was being chosen. Not discarded. The merchants spat on the ground, muttering curses. Mothers pulled their children away as if the girl carried a disease. But the human did not look back. He walked with her out of the market, his stride strong, his hand never letting go of hers. While behind them, laughter and insults followed like dust in the wind. The orphan stumbled as they walked, her legs weak from hunger, but the human slowed his pace to match hers. He did not scold her. He only kept his hand firm so she would not fall. Every step away from the market felt unreal to her. As if she was caught in a dream that might vanish any second, her mind spun with questions she could not ask. Why was he doing this? What did he want from her? Was this another trick that would end in pain? She had learned to fear kindness, because kindness always carried a hidden price. Yet something in his face, something in his eyes, made her wonder if this time was different. When they reached the edge of the city, the noises of the market grew faint, replaced by the wind rustling. Against old walls, the human finally stopped and looked at her. His eyes softened. He reached into his bag and pulled out food, real food, warm bread and dried meat. He placed it in her hands without a word, her stomach twisted with hunger, but she froze, staring at the food as if it were a trap. She remembered all the times people had thrown scraps at her, only to laugh when she ate like an animal. Yet the human did not laugh. He only waited, his expression calm, his body still. Until finally, she took a bite, and the taste made her eyes sting with tears. He crouched down, so he was at her eye level. His voice low, so only she could hear. "You are safe with me," he said. And the words hit her harder than the food, harder than the laughter of the market. Safe, a word she had never known, a word she wanted to believe, but could not fully. Trust. The orphan's heart pounded. Part of her wanted to run. Part of her wanted to stay. She had been unwanted all her life, invisible and ignored. Yet this human had seen her, had chosen her, had defended her. The world called her broken. But his eyes told a different story. She did not know if she should believe him. But deep inside, a small, fragile hope began to burn. A hope she thought had died long ago. She kept her eyes on him, afraid to blink, afraid he would vanish like smoke in the wind, but he did not vanish. He only stood beside her. Tall and unshaken, the city behind them still whispered. The people still laughed, but the orphan girl knew something had changed forever. Because one human, against all voices, had made an unexpected choice, and that choice had given her a future. She never thought she would see, and in her heart, for the first time, she dared to wonder what tomorrow might bring. The sun was falling when they reached the edge of the settlement. The air was cooler now, and the roads grew quieter. The human walked with steady steps. The orphan followed close, her thin hand still in his, though her eyes kept flicking around, as if she expected someone to jump out and drag her back. Every stone, every shadow felt heavy to her, for in her world nothing safe lasted. Every gift turned to punishment. Every kind word turned to chains. She was waiting for the moment when this man would show his true face, the way others had before. Yet the moment did not come. He only led her onward until a small home appeared. Ahead was not large, not beautiful, but to her eyes it looked like a fortress. The walls were strong. Smoke rose from a small chimney, and the wooden door stood firm. She froze outside it, her heart hammering. The human opened the door, and light spilled out, warm and golden. She had never stood at the entrance of such a place as a guest. He motioned her to step in, his voice quiet. "Come inside," he said, and though her feet shook, she obeyed. The air inside was warmer than anything she had known. The smell of food lingered. The floor was clean, the table strong. Every corner felt alive with comfort. She gripped her broken cloth tighter. Afraid her dirt and weakness would stain this world, the human placed a bowl of water before her. Clear and cool, he nodded for her to drink. She bent quickly and drank, half expecting him to laugh, but he did not laugh. He only set more food on the table. Bread and roasted roots. He pushed the plate toward her. And again she waited for the trick that never came. She ate slowly at first, each bite making her chest tighten with confusion. Why was he giving her this? Why was he not asking for anything? In return, the human sat nearby, watching with calm eyes, not forcing her to speak, not pulling her close, simply letting her eat until the hunger that had twisted her body began to ease. When her hands stopped shaking, she dared to look at him directly. The firelight softened his face, his eyes steady and unreadable, but not cruel. She wanted to ask who he was, why he had chosen her, why he had not left her to die as others wished. Yet the words caught in her throat. She had forgotten how to ask questions without fear. The human broke the silence at last. His voice even, "This house is safe. No one will harm you here." The words struck her like a strange weapon. Safe. She did not know the meaning of it. She did not trust it. Yet some part of her wanted desperately to believe he stood and placed A blanket on a small bed against the wall. He gestured for her to rest there. The mattress was soft, far softer than the stones she used to curl up on outside the market. Her body trembled as she touched it. She looked back at him, half expecting him to lock the door or tie her down. But he only stepped back and said, "Rest." The orphan lay down, clutching her thin cloth in one hand and the new blanket in the other. Warmth spread around her body, but inside her heart, fear still whispered. What if this was all a test? What if he wanted to see how much she trusted him before taking everything away? Her eyes remained open, watching his every move. The human did not come closer. He did not reach for her. He sat by the table, pulling out a small book. His eyes lowered to read as the firelight danced across the walls. She waited for him to rise. But he stayed still, his presence steady like the low hum of the fire. And slowly her body grew heavy with sleep. Her dreams were filled with old memories, stones hitting her back, voices laughing, hands pushing her away. Yet through it all, she heard the steady sound of the human's voice in her memory, telling her she was safe, and the sound pulled her back when fear tried to drown her. She woke in the night with a start, her breath fast, sweat on her skin. The room was quiet, the fire low but still burning. She turned her head and saw him there, not sleeping, still sitting by the table, his eyes alert, his body calm. As if he had chosen to keep watch over her while she slept. Tears pricked at her eyes. Before she could stop them, no one had ever stayed awake to protect her. No one had ever cared if she lived through the night. She pressed the blanket to her face to hide the sound of her sobs, but a soft voice came from across the room. "You are not alone anymore." Her chest shook. She wanted to deny it, wanted to say he was lying like all the others. But the steadiness in his voice broke through the wall she had built. Her sobs softened into quiet breaths, and she lay back down, her eyes heavy again. Her heart uncertain, but less afraid. The night stretched long, filled with silence and firelight. And though fear still lived inside her, another feeling began to grow, fragile but real, the sense that maybe, just maybe, this human was different. Maybe his house was more than shelter. Maybe it was the beginning of something she had never known. Something called trust. And, as dawn touched the window with pale light, the orphan girl realized she had survived her first night under his roof, and the world outside had already begun to change. The new day began quietly. Sunlight slipped through the cracks of the wooden shutters. The small house smelled of fresh bread, and the sound of birds outside replaced the rough voices of the market. The orphan girl woke slowly, her body still. Unsure if this peace was real or just another dream that would shatter, she sat up on the soft bed, her fingers curling around the blanket as if holding it would keep the moment alive. She saw the human near the fire, preparing food, moving with steady hands. He looked calm, as if her presence in his home was the most natural thing in the world. Yet she still felt like an intruder in someone else's life. He noticed her eyes. Open and gave a small nod, sliding a plate toward her. She hesitated, staring at the food again, wondering what price she would have to pay this time. But his gaze carried no demand, no hidden trap, only patience. So she ate slowly, every bite tasting strange because it carried no cruelty with it. After the meal, silence stretched between them. The girl wanted to ask why he had chosen her, why he did not leave her behind, but fear locked her tongue. The human broke the silence first, his voice low and even. "You do not need to hide here," she stiffened. His words cut deeper than she expected, for she had been hiding all her life, not only from people, but from herself. She quickly pulled the dirty cloth closer around her shoulders, trying to cover the faint shimmer that sometimes appeared on her skin when she was nervous. But he had already seen it. The human leaned slightly closer, not threatening, not forceful, only curious. His eyes followed the faint glowing lines on her arms and neck. marks that looked like starlight trapped under her skin. She trembled and pulled back, her voice finally breaking free. "Do not look, please." He did not obey the fear in her tone. Instead, he asked softly, "Why do you hide this?" Her chest tightened. She had never told anyone the truth because truth had always brought more pain. Yet his steady eyes pushed her to speak. Her lips shook as she whispered, "My kind says I am broken. These marks are proof. They say my blood is wrong. They say no mate should ever touch me." The human did not look away. He did not flinch. He only listened. And she felt the words pour out of her as if a locked door had finally opened. She told him how her people cast her out, how they said she would never give life, never carry children, never be of value. She told him how others looked at her with disgust. Not as a female, but as a mistake that should vanish. Her eyes burned with shame as she spoke, expecting laughter or anger, expecting him to push her away now that he knew. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "This is why no one wanted me. This is why they left me to starve. I am cursed." Silence filled the room after her confession. The fire cracked softly. Her hands shook as she waited for him to speak. Every part of her braced for rejection, her body ready to run if he told her to leave. But the human did not laugh. He did not call her broken. His voice was steady when he answered, "You are not cursed. You are not broken. You are alive." Her head lifted in shock, her eyes wide. No one had ever said such words to her. Not once in her life. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Her heart raced as she stared at him, trying to see if this was another trick, yet his face carried no mockery, only certainty. He leaned closer, his tone calm but firm. "Do not let them decide your worth. They fear what they do not understand. But I see you." Those last words struck her hardest. She lowered her gaze, tears gathering in her eyes. She remembered the marketplace where no one saw her as female, where no one called her by name, where she was invisible. And now this human said he saw her, truly saw her. It felt impossible. She wanted to believe, but fear still clung to her. She asked with a broken whisper, "Why me? Why not choose another? Why not walk away like the rest?" He answered without hesitation, "Because I do not follow their eyes. I follow my own." Her breath caught, her chest ached. The tears she had held back for years finally spilled. She covered her face with trembling hands, ashamed of her weakness. Yet he did not move closer to force comfort. He let her cry freely, giving her space. And somehow that respect hurt more than cruelty ever had, because it was so rare. As the sobs faded, she looked at him again. His expression steady, his presence unshaken. And in that moment, something inside her began to shift, fragile but real. The first spark of trust. The first step toward believing she was more than what the world had told her. The secret of her kind was no longer hidden. The truth had been spoken, and instead of chains, it brought her the first taste of freedom. And deep inside, though fear still whispered, hope began to speak louder. The next day began with the sound of voices outside, louder than usual, sharp and mocking. The orphan girl froze as she heard her name twisted into cruel jokes. She sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the blanket with trembling fingers. Fear rising in her chest. She knew those voices well. They belonged to the same merchants and neighbors who had always thrown stones at her. In the streets, the human had already noticed. He set down his tools and walked toward the door, his steps calm but firm. The girl whispered, "They will laugh at you. They will say, 'I am cursed. Please do not go.'" But his eyes were steady, and he opened the door without hesitation. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, their faces twisted with scorn. They pointed toward the house, laughing louder when they saw the orphan peeking through the window. One shouted, "So it is true. The human keeps the cursed one under his roof." Another added, "She will bring him nothing but shame. She is no mate." She is only a shadow. The orphan's chest burned with shame. Her body curled smaller. She wished she could vanish into the floor. This was how it always was. Every time someone looked at her, it was only to mock her weakness. But then she heard the human's voice cut through the noise. "She is with me," he said, his tone even but powerful. His words carried across the yard like a blade of steel. The laughter faltered for a moment, then turned sharper. One of the merchants sneered. "With you, human, you will regret it. She is nothing. She will never give you children. She will never stand as a true female. You should cast her out before it is too late." The orphan shook, tears burning at the corner of her eyes. She waited for the human to hesitate, to falter under their words, but he did not. His voice rose louder. "She is not nothing. She is mine to protect, and no one will harm her while I stand here." The crowd stirred uneasily, some muttering that humans were dangerous. Others still laughed, yet none of them dared step closer. The human's eyes were hard as stone. His presence filled the space with an unseen weight. He stood tall between the girl and the world that had always hated her. And in that moment, she saw something she had never known. Someone fighting. For her, her heart raced. She pressed her hands to her chest, unable to breathe. The crowd's voices still tried to reach her, calling her broken, cursed, worthless, but the sound of his defiance was stronger, louder. His words wrapped around her like a shield she had never dreamed of having. Finally, the merchants spat on the ground and turned away, their insults fading as they walked back toward the market, their voices still cruel but weaker now. The human closed the door behind them, silence filling the house once more, and only then did the orphan's body collapse onto the floor, shaking from the storm that had passed. The human knelt beside her, not pulling her up, not forcing her to speak, only steadying her with his hand on her shoulder, his voice calm again. "They will not touch you. Not while I am here." Tears streamed down her face. She tried to hide them, but could not. Her voice cracked. "Why do you fight for me? Why do you stand against them?" Her words came heavy, soaked in disbelief, for no one had ever raised even a single word to defend her. And here was a man defying the entire crowd. His answer was simple. "Because you are worth it." She shook her head, her tears falling harder. "No, I am broken. I cannot give life. I cannot be what they want. I cannot be what you need." But he did not let her finish. His voice cut through her despair. "You do not need to be what they want. You only need to be yourself." The words felt impossible, yet they burned in her chest like fire. She stared at him with wide eyes, his face steady, no doubt in his expression. And for the first time, she felt the crushing weight of the world lift. Even if only for a moment that night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment in her mind, the way he had stood before the crowd, the way his voice had silenced their cruelty, the way he had claimed her as someone worth protecting. It felt unreal, yet it was real. She had seen it with her own eyes. The human sat near the fire, keeping watch again, his figure calm in the glow of the flames. And the orphan girl realized something deep and frightening. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer alone. She had someone who would fight the world for her. And that truth was more powerful than any dream she had ever dared to imagine. Her heart whispered a question she could not speak aloud. What if this human was not just her protector? What if he was the one who would change her life forever? The thought scared her, but it also gave her a fragile spark of hope. The fire burned low, and the night deepened. The orphan held the blanket tight and closed her eyes. For the first time, she did not fear what tomorrow would bring, because tomorrow, she knew she would not face it alone. Days passed slowly, yet for the orphan girl, they felt like something new each morning. Instead of cold stones and cruel voices, she now woke to the smell of bread. Instead of hunger twisting her stomach, she found food waiting on the table. Instead of loneliness pressing on her chest. She found the human's steady presence filling the silence. At first, she moved like a shadow in his house, careful not to break anything, afraid her very touch would stain his world. But he never pushed her away. When she dropped a cup, he only picked it up calmly. When she sat quietly in a corner, he let her. Never forcing words from her lips, he gave her space, and in that space she began to breathe again. One morning, he handed her a wooden cup filled with warm tea. His voice gentle, "Drink slowly. It will help." She stared at it, her hands trembling as she took it. She sipped, and the warmth spread through her body. She whispered thanks, her voice so soft she thought he had not heard, but he gave a small nod. And the smallest smile touched his face. The orphan noticed his patience most of all. He never mocked her, never hurried her, and when she spoke clumsily, forgetting words from fear, he waited as if every sound mattered. Little by little, she began to talk more, asking small questions, learning about him, learning about herself. And the silence between them became less heavy, more like comfort than emptiness. In the evenings he told her stories. Not grand tales of kings or battles, but simple ones of his travels, places he had seen, skies filled with strange stars, rivers that glowed in the night. She listened with wide eyes, clinging to every word. For in her life, no one had ever spoken to her like she was worthy of listening. Sometimes, she laughed at his words without meaning to. A small sound that startled even her. When she covered her mouth in fear, thinking he would scold her, he only chuckled softly and said, "Your laughter is stronger than their cruelty." Those words stayed in her heart, burning warmly against the cold memories of her past. The bond between them grew without either of them naming it. He taught her simple things: how to mend cloth, how to cook food without burning it, how to walk without fear of every eye watching. She followed his guidance carefully, not because she feared punishment, but because she wanted to learn. She wanted to be worthy of the space he had given her. Yet at night, when she lay on the bed, doubt still crept into her heart. What if he grew tired of her? What if the world outside forced him to let her go? She whispered those fears into the blanket, never daring to speak them aloud. But when morning came, he was always still there, steady as the rising sun. One evening, as the fire crackled low, she asked the question that had lived in her chest since the first day, her voice trembling. "Why did you not leave me in the market? Why did you choose me?" The human looked at her for a long moment, then said simply, "Because I saw you." When no one else would, her eyes filled with tears she could not hide. She pressed her hands to her chest. Those words struck deeper than any wound. She had lived invisible all her life, and now she was seen, truly seen. The weight of that truth broke something inside her. But in its place grew something stronger, trust. The next morning, when he worked outside, chopping wood, she stepped forward without fear and carried pieces to help. The villagers who passed muttered cruel things, but for the first time she did not lower her head. She stood tall beside him, his presence giving her strength. Their laughter no longer cut as deep, because she was not facing it alone. That night, she dared to sit closer to him by the fire. The silence between them warm instead of cold. He did not move away. He only offered her another cup of tea. Their hands brushed for a moment, and she felt a spark that made her heart race. She pulled back quickly, afraid he would see her trembling. But his calm eyes told her he had noticed and did not judge in her dreams. She no longer saw only stones and hunger. She began to see the firelight, his steady face, his voice calling her safe. And when she awoke, she realized those dreams were not lies. They were her new life. Fragile but real, the bond no one had expected was now unspoken between them. The villagers still laughed. Her people would still call her broken. But inside his house, she was more than a cursed orphan. She was someone worth protecting, someone worth teaching, someone worth seeing. And deep in her heart, though she feared to name it, She began to wonder if this bond was not just trust or safety, but something greater, something she had never believed she could have, the beginning of love. The bond had grown like a fire that no one expected, steady at first, then brighter with every passing day. The orphan girl who once lived in shadows now walked in the light of someone's care. Yet deep inside, she still carried a fear that it could all vanish, that the human who had given her safety might one day turn away like all the others. But the human showed no sign of leaving. He stood firm every time the villagers mocked. He worked hard and always left space for her at his table. He never treated her as weak, even when her hands shook. Instead, he taught her again and again until her fingers grew steady. With him, she felt herself changing, becoming stronger one morning as they walked to fetch water. A group of men blocked their path, their voices filled with cruel laughter. "Human, you waste your strength on her," one sneered. "She is no female. She cannot give you children. Cast her away before she curses you." To the orphan froze, the old shame rising. Like fire in her chest, her eyes lowered, waiting for the human to feel the weight of their words. Waiting for him to push her aside, but his hand took hers firmly. His voice rang clear. "She is mine, and none of you will speak of her again." The crowd stepped back, their laughter fading, for his eyes carried a steel that none dared test. The girl's heart raced, not from fear, but from something far deeper. His words echoed inside her, not chains, but a claim of choice, not as an object, but as a partner that night when they returned home. Silence lay heavy between them. The orphan sat near the fire, staring at her trembling hands. She whispered, "Why? Do you keep saying I am yours? Do you not see what they see? Do you not fear what they say?" The human moved closer, his voice steady as always. "I see you. Not their lies, not their fear. Only you." Her chest ached, her eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hand to her mouth. "Afraid of what might escape," he continued. "They say you are broken, but I see strength. They say you are cursed, but I see courage. They say you are not female, but I see a woman standing before me." The words struck her harder than any cruelty she had endured. Her tears spilled freely. She whispered, "No one ever called me that. Not once. They never saw me as female, only as dirt." The human reached for her hand, his touch firm yet gentle. "Then let me be the first. You are not dirt. You are not invisible. You are my mate if you will have me." Her breath stopped, her body frozen. The world seemed to fall silent. She could not believe what she had heard. Mate, a word that had always been denied to her, a word her people said she would never hear, now spoken by the one who had seen her when no one else would. Her lips trembled, fear and hope clashing inside her. You would take me, even knowing I cannot give you children. Even knowing I am called broken." His eyes did not move. His voice carried no doubt. "Yes, because you are enough. You are more than enough." She broke then, not from pain, but from the unbearable weight of joy. Her body shook with sobs. She buried her face against his chest. His arms came around her, steady and warm, holding her as if she had always belonged there. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. Days later, the village still whispered, still mocked, but it no longer mattered. For when she walked beside the human, her head did not bow. His hand in hers told the world she was claimed, not as property, but as partner. The people could not understand it, they never would. But she no longer cared. In the evenings, she smiled more easily. Her laughter grew freer. And when she looked at him across the fire, her eyes no longer carried only fear. They carried trust, affection, and something deeper that she had never dared to believe. She could feel love. The human saw it too. Though he did not press her with words, his presence was enough, steady and unshaken. Together they built a life from nothing, a life the world had denied her. yet one that was now real because he had chosen her, and she had chosen him in return. The orphan, who was never seen as female, who was mocked as broken, who was left to starve, had become a mate, not through blood, not through children, but through love and courage, through the bond of two hearts that refused to listen to the cruelty of others. And as she lay one night under his roof, her head resting against him, the firelight warm across their faces, she whispered the truth she had always kept hidden. I thought no one would ever want me. I thought no one would ever see me. But you did. And now I never want to leave your side. His arm tightened around her, his voice low but firm. Then you never will. The girl closed her eyes, her heart finally at peace. For she had found the mate she never dreamed of, and in his arms she discovered a truth more powerful than any curse. She was not broken, she was loved.